The Financial Survival Network, helping you to survive and thrive in the new economy. Get your free financial survival toolkit and find out where to buy gold and silver safely at great prices. Sign up at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. This is the Financial Survival Network.
1490 WGCH. This is Kerry Lutz, and you're listening to the Financial Survival Network. These days, flying around the country is a god-awful experience. You've got the TSA wanting to examine every crevice in your body, and they are especially hostile to bottled water. You might make an H2O incendiary device, and from the moment you enter the airport to the moment you exit the airport at your destination, you are indeed a federal prisoner. But there are alternatives, which is why we've got Jeffrey A. Tucker here from Laissez-Faire Books and Mises.org. And Jeff, welcome back on FinancialSurvivalNetwork.com.
It's really great to be here.
And we are pleased to have you back. So you wrote this article about the TSA, and you compared it to Tiffany's security. And I'm wondering, do you think the security guards at the airport, the TSA, are going to start with white glove service?
Well, it's an amazing thing what happened when TSA took over. You know, security at airports was already heavily compromised before 9/11 with all kinds of regulations that were preventing airlines from having a kind of a market system for achieving that balance between freedom and security. But then after it was nationalized, and this was a catastrophic decision because it ruined flying for all Americans, really. And we find our rights being violated, and we're being spied upon. And we, you know, when you go through the system, you can't get over the sense that there's something fundamentally irrational about it. You know, I mean, it doesn't really make you feel safe. It just makes you feel sort of robbed. You know?
Yeah, robbed of your dignity and your Fourth Amendment rights against unreasonable and unwarranted search and seizures. Huh?
Yeah, that's right. And you know, and every once in a while you come across TSA agents who are very nice and they seem like normal people, whatever. But even that, it's creepy because it's not so much exactly how you're precisely treated. I think there's an institutional sort of oppression, a feeling of oppression you get just having been put through this bureaucratic maze, you know, that may or may not make any sense, and probably it doesn't make any sense. You know, security experts often will refer to what the TSA does as not so much security, but security theater. You know, they go. I mean, I had a really nice bottle of cucumber vodka that I stupidly tried to take through. I'd forgotten, you know, that of course you can't carry cucumber vodka on an airplane, you know, but they took it from me, and you know, I was very sad about it, and the lady was sad, and we were all sad, and she dumped it right in the trash. Now, what kind of system is that? It was just crazy. And yet you can carry the same size bottle of things like the stuff you use to wash out your contact lenses. You know, that's not a problem because there's a bureaucratic exception for this. So none of it really makes any sense. Everybody's following the rules. The rules are made up by regulators and bureaucrats and politicians. And there's no feedback mechanism. There's no creativity associated with it at all. There is a legitimate need for security on airlines. The problem is that the TSA can't really satisfy that demand because it's not really a creative system. There's no feedback, and there's no real consumer there. And here's the other thing: the TSA doesn't really have, you know, ownership over the property it's allegedly protecting. So they're not getting the right signals to help them understand what they should be doing. Even if they knew what to do, they couldn't change the rules in time to do it properly. I don't think there's any saving the TSA. In other words, I don't think that any real reforms are going to work. So I like this idea of just completely privatizing it. It never should have. Security at the airlines should have never been nationalized. And all the regulations that had previously hamstrung it, that led to 9/11 in the first place, should have never existed at all. We need a system much more like we get in the private sector. Private sector has a need for security too, and we need to look at the institutions and see how they manage it.
Yeah, and you mentioned as your example going into Tiffany's in Vancouver, and security there is omnipresent. You feel it all over, and yet it's not intrusive. And it's achieving its goal, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. You have a real you when you walk into Tiffany's, you want to be secure, and you, but you also want to look at these gigantic diamonds, and so they're displayed out there in front of you, and obviously, I don't know how much inventory they have. I mean, it's just absolutely shocking. But you're free to shop, and you're feeling welcome. You're feeling doted on and protected, and safe, and appreciated as a customer. So it's a very interesting thing. Obviously, the airlines and Tiffany's, those aren't exactly the same kind of security problems. But all I'm saying is, if we nationalized security in jewelry stores, we would get a similar kind of situation like you have in the TSA. A lot of abuse of human rights, a real sense of being attacked and invaded, and no greater security, really. So I think we can learn from Tiffany's, not in the sense that we need to replicate it at airports, but in the sense that we need to let the market take over, so there's a feedback mechanism there between the producer and consumer, and so we can have more creative ways of protecting people while also serving their legitimate desires for their bodily integrity to be protected and respected, and also kept secure at the same time. So I don't really know what the answer is. All I really pointed to this Tiffany's case as an example of how the private sector can solve a very complicated problem with great innovation and creativity.
Yeah, and of course, like you said, the airlines have the ultimate incentive to make sure that there's secure flights, because it's their property and it's their reputation, it's their goodwill that gets destroyed when they blow it. And yet nobody seems too interested in fixing this mess. And another thing is, productivity wise, the TSA is a total loser. They've got people standing around that you don't really understand what they're doing. They appear to be doing nothing other than telling you, move, take off your shoes, put your bottles in the garbage, and take all the stuff out of your pocket and throw it in the bin. And this is the job of these people, and some of them are quite obnoxious at
Yeah,
it.
there's a serious calculation problem with TSA. They never know how many people to have, and they always have either way too many or far too few. Have you noticed that? It's
Oh
like,
yeah.
yeah, and it's funny to me because like if you look at the labor problems at a local grocery store, just go down to your local chain grocery store and ask the manager how he handles labor problems. Every single day, they're calibrating expected number of customers when they're coming in, and how many people are going to have stocking shelves, and how many people are going to have at registers, and they will change schedules week by week to accommodate this. They keep very careful records of the
Sure.
past. They make big seasonal differences in how many people they schedule. If they discover changes in the traffic flows, they will send workers home. It's a big deal. But the TSA never bothers with any of this, and the TSA would be a lot easier to handle, because precisely, presumably, how
Exactly.
many people are going to be at the airport at any one time. But somehow it's never even a consideration. I mean, they don't. TSA doesn't spend any time apparently trying to deal with the problem of traffic flows and labor allocation, whereas any local retail store understands that has to be a major part of the management strategy.
Yeah, that labor forecasting module, they just seem to have not written in this TSA software package, because
Yeah.
actually a very close friend of mine created the first forecasting program for supermarket managers, so they know the day before Christmas, based on previous patterns, they need to have approximately this number of people. And the program went one better. It would find the cheapest mix of people, and they would actually be saving money. But the TSA has no sense of forecasting. It seems like 9 to 5, that's when most of them are there. And before 9 and after 5, there's less people there. And like you said, they know exactly how many people are booked on every
Right.
single plane. And to get those numbers from the airlines and schedule accordingly doesn't seem like it's a monumental feat of
Right.
software design. And yet, they're totally, completely unable to do it because they're the government.
Yeah, they can't do anything, and there's no calculation whatsoever. I mean, Mises drew attention to this problem in his old writings on the topic. I mean, if you don't have price mechanisms working and there's no profit and loss, I mean, you just kind of dump a bunch of resources, and that the overutilization of labor resources is very conspicuous at TSA. But I've seen it also other times when there's just far too few people, and it's amazing when you've got like 2 agents and about 1,000 people waiting to go through them, and you can feel the temperature rising, and people getting increasingly frustrated. And look at the pace at which the TSA agents go about their business.
Ugh.
They don't get faster. If anything, they slow down, and with a kind of aggressive sort of bureaucratic way. Like, listen, if you want to fly, you're gonna have to go through us. And that's it.
Yeah, and not to mention those scatter X-ray things that don't do anything except tie the lines up. And we could go on all day about it because it's pathetic that nobody thinks these things through. But it's government, like you said. There's no incentive to fix the system or to improve it, and the only thing that could ever be effective is dumping them and privatizing it, which supposedly there's an out in the law to do that, and a couple of airports are attempting to do it, but we'll see if it gets done.
Well, it's interesting. I think that actually the whole problem of airports has gotten probably better over the last 2 or 3 years, and part of the reason for that is that, I mean, to the extent that there is any private ownership or control over the airline experience from the airport to the airlines themselves, they've really worked very hard to try to overcome the problem of the TSA. It was just tragic that this problem even exists at all. I mean, Congress created the problem.
As
this
usual.
is totally artificial. I mean, it was. We had a perfect opportunity after 9/11 to look at what happened and say, look, we need a better feedback mechanism between the owners of the airlines and the needs of security of the airport. Let's deregulate the system so we can let the market discover what the right solution is. Instead, they locked it down, and for 10 years we've been preventing a crime that wasn't prevented on 9/11, and forever, trying to adapt the system in some sort of way. And like I say, I think it's improved, but that's mainly because the airlines themselves have gotten better at issuing
pre-screening,
tickets, and pre-screening and having the kiosks everywhere so you can speed up the traffic there. But they do everything possible to overcome this terrible tragedy. Kerry, if I was going to mention one positive aspect about the TSA, before the TSA, the average American would confront their government very rarely in life. I mean, there's the gigantic bureaucracies, the Department of Labor, Department. How often do you actually meet these guys? Okay, if you're getting an audit, okay,
try to avoid it at all possible costs.
Most of us conduct our lives in a way that we try to avoid the state in every way possible. And the post office in the old days was the one place where we confronted the government, and it was the big joke, right? Like, well, we don't want the whole of life to work like the post office. Well. And now, most of us don't even bother with the post office anymore. So the TSA is a very interesting case of actual federal government bureaucracy that we encounter and have to deal with more or less routinely,
Yep.
And that's very interesting because it gives us, so there's a reason why we're sitting here talking about this.
Sure.
It annoys us. And we confront it, we see it. Most of the problems of government we never see. They're there, and they're powerful, and they're dangerous, but we don't see them.
All right, Jeff. Well, hey, thanks for talking about this with us. I think it's an issue that really should become a campaign issue, that it needs to be paid more attention to, because it really is symbolic of failures of government and where the private sector truly excels. People want to read more of your work, Jeff, where would they go?
I've got just tons of it at lfb.org. And I've got a new book coming out. Not today or tomorrow, but on Friday. And it's called A Beautiful Anarchy. I'm pretty excited about it.
All right. Hey, that sounds great. We will get back in touch with you in a couple weeks after we get to read it. And we'll talk about it, okay?
Thanks so much for having me on your show.
Hey, you be well.